Amen. Well, I love the manifestations. They just amaze me. Like, once again, I have to promise that I did not call up Rob and Ellen to tell them what I was going to teach on, because I want to teach on the war between good and evil and how important our part is. That there's a real war going on, and God expects us to put on the armor of God and step up to the plate as warriors. And if we don't, there are serious battles lost. So I'm running over in my mind, how am I going to open this up? How am I going to introduce this subject? And Rob opens up with, I need you to know how important you are to me. Know that I need you. I'm like, thank you. That's kind of it, guys. Okay, we can turn off the TV and I'll go home. If you get exactly this prophecy, I need you to know how important you are to me. Know that I need you. If that's what we get tonight, that is so much more than so many Christians know or have. If you're a Calvinist, I'm in a discussion right now with a guy who's like, God is in control. And it's kind of interesting because he understands there's a war between good and evil. So he doesn't believe that we're just puppets. But what he does believe is that God's God, and God must be okay with what's going on down here, because anytime he wants, he can just step in and change it. And if you believe that way, then in order to align yourself with God, you have to be okay with what's going on down here. Because if God's not okay with rape, then he would step in and change it. If God's not okay with the murders that are going on, he would step in and change it. If God wasn't okay with Dorian destroying the Bahamas, he would step in and change it. And there's an old Arabic proverb. I don't know if I've never heard it said in all of my trips in Israel. So I can only vouch for the fact that it's one of those proverbs that used to be around that now isn't. But there's an old Arabic proverb, because in Arabic is a very fatal. The Muslim religion is a very fatalistic religion. If you remember, how often do you hear a Muslim say God willing, if God wills it, that kind of thing. And so there's an old Arabic saying that, if you see a blind man, kick him. Why should you be kinder than God? That makes really good sense. If God made the guy blind, what are you doing trying to help the guy out so much? God could have helped him and decided to make him blind instead. And that's the logic if God is in control. Why God caused this problem? Why should I expend a whole lot of energy to straighten out the problem? And we've got to really understand the intensity of the warfare. And let me tell you how this got started. So let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 8. So I'm translating in Ecclesiastes with Bill Schlegel, that's a kind of a misnomer, because Bill reads the Hebrew more than fluently. When you teach Hebrew at a college in Israel, you know Hebrew. So it's more like that Bill's this wild horse charging off through the Hebrew scriptures and throwing out all this great wisdom, and I'm trying to write notes and get concepts as fast as I can. And he is absolutely amazing dude. So let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 8. And let's see. Okay, go there already. There we go. So Ecclesiastes 8:8, and I want to read the NIV translation, because that's pretty close to where I was until Bill and I translated this. And the NIV reads, the NIV read wind, but we do spirit, because the word is ruach. No man has power over the spirit to contain it, so no man has power over the day of his death. As no one is discharged in time of war, so wickedness will not release those who practice it. And the reason that I went with that translation originally was that I didn't understand what the actual literal verse means. And this is a problem that you have in translation. If you're running up against something where the words, when you translate them, they don't make any sense, then you kind of fish around and try to make sense of what the verse is saying. But if you've got an REV available and you can look at our translation at this point, there's no man who has power over the Spirit to retain the Spirit. This is a tough one because it could be wind, because the word ruach means wind and spirit. So either this could be the typical, because the second refrain, no one has power over the day of his death. So it could be an analogy, just like you can't, you don't have power over the wind to restrain it. You don't have power over the day of your death. It kind of gets away from you. Or you could look at it as a reduplication, which is very common in the Hebrew language, which is the way Bill and I finally decided to go. There's no man who has power over the Spirit to retain the Spirit. A native Hebrew reader would see ruach and realize it's both wind and spirit, and see both meanings at one time. It would be a true amphibologia. So you don't have power over the Spirit to retain the Spirit. No one has power over the day of his death. We just don't. And then you have a kind of a hard start again, if you will. No one is discharged in that war. And you've got to understand the war here in the context. What's the war? And the war is, in the context, between life and death. So no one has power. You can't hang on to your life, your spirit. Your spirit, your ruach, it's giving life to your body. You can't hang on to that. You can try and be as healthy as you want, but you can't hang on to that. You don't have power over the day of your death, and no one is discharged in that war. In the war between life and death, no one is discharged. Everyone is going to die. Now, we know from the New Testament that there's also a rapture, where at least I'm praying to be in it, but lots of people have prayed to be in it rather unsuccessfully. So anyway, who knows whether, I don't really think God pays attention to those particular prayers. I think that's more just me speaking it. But in any case, so it goes on. No one is discharged in that war between life and death, and wickedness will not rescue its owners. And that was the verse that I was just like, what? And like I say, in the NIV goes with wickedness will not release those who practice it. But it's release is a nuance, because it's really the word save, deliver, or rescue in the Hebrew text. But then you got to make sense of that. But then all of a sudden, and it was interesting because Bill and I got help from Renee. And Renee speaks, Renee Speaks Dugan is our secretary, and she writes fantasy, the Tolkien, Lord of the Rings stuff, with witches and warlocks, and is in, loves the Harry Potter movies and that kind of stuff. And really, because she writes in that genre, she got it immediately, and really it was amazing how fast she grasped it. But she just said, the people that are into the dark arts and the people who do wickedness, they think they're in control. And they do. You talk to people that are into Wicca, you talk to people that are into the satanic movement, they don't think they're pawns being shoved around. They don't think they're being taken advantage of. They think they're power brokers. And the devil works very hard with them to maintain that delusion, that you're in control, you're the power broker, you're the one making things happen, cast your spells, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you own this stuff. I think of the magicians in Egypt. They could throw down sticks and turn them into snakes and that kind of stuff. I mean, in the real genuine black arts, there's real genuine evil power. And so what's this saying here? In verse 8, then no man has power over the spirit to retain the spirit. No one has power over the day of his death. Nobody's discharged in the war between life and death. And wickedness is not going to rescue you. You think you're a witch and you're gonna do okay. There was that saying, maybe you guys have heard it, I'd rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. I don't know if you've ever heard that saying. Is that, new to me? I mean, is it new to you guys? Okay, kind of new. All right, but anyway, that was a pretty common, you can Google it, pretty common saying maybe 15, 20 years ago. I'd rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. That's your power broker attitude. That's your arrogant attitude. Nobody rules in Gehenna. All you do is burn and hurt, until you're annihilated. That's the end of that. And so wickedness will not rescue its owners. So there are people out there who are working to own wickedness. They want to control it. Well, what do you do with wickedness? You use it as a weapon against other people. And then the world is full of evil people, and there's a war on then between good and evil. And the people who believe that God, and interestingly enough, the people that are on the dark side, they all get it. If you ask Darth Vader, are you at war with good? They absolutely, they don't sit there and say, what? There's no war. What are you talking about? The people on the dark side know exactly there's a war, and they know exactly who the enemy is, and they go after him. They go after him with curses. They go after him with lies and slander. They go after undercutting him, stabbing him in the back. It's unbelievable how the dark side wars against the truth. And then you get the side of God. Well, God's in control, so, we don't really need to do much, the will of God's going to occur. Wait a minute. I thought death was an enemy. If you die, that's not the will of God. Now I can't explain some things. We've got to be sharper than that. Gosh, I'm back to Rob's prophecy. I need you to know how important you are to me. We have got to step up to the plate. We've got to step up to the plate in prayer. We've got to step up to the plate in walking by the Spirit. We've got to step up to the plate in our knowledge of the Bible and being able to defend the Bible to unbelievers, or explain the Bible to unbelievers, or help unbelievers come to an understanding of the Scripture. And then it makes sense, because there's so much Christian stupidity out there. It's unbelievable, and Christians just end up looking dumb. And we have the knowledge to come against that. And I think about, if we look at the Scripture, how did we get in this mess? Now, note that there was a time when God was in control before he created any free will beings. God was totally in control. It was all God, nobody else. But then God decided, this isn't where I want to go. I want a family. And so he created free will beings, and he started in the spirit world first, and then he put up with a rebellion. Then he did the flesh world, and he put up with another rebellion. But God is a loving God. He wants to be a father. He wants a family, and he's looking for those faithful children. And then when he finds faithful children, he's not a control freak, and he's not a micromanager. Let's go to Genesis chapter 1. Because in Genesis, what does God do? He gives away his power. And this is one of the problems when we talk about Christian errors, and you'll hear it. God is omnipotent. God is omnipresent. God is omniscient, the omnis. And none of those are in the Bible. There's no verse that says God knows everything. And God certainly doesn't have all the power, because he keeps giving it away. It says in Hebrews 2:14, we may get time to read it, the devil has the power of death. Oh, well, then God gave away some power. So he's not omnipotent. He's given away power. He's not omniscient. He doesn't know the future perfectly. He's not, and it goes on. But anyway, those things aren't in the scripture. And if you, I learned in debate, because I debated and went to Emory University between my sophomore and freshman and junior year of high school, studied debate, went back to high school and debated with my friend Mike Cody. We went to the state finals our first year, went to the regional finals our second year. I was pretty decent at it, so was he. But I learned in debate, if you can throw out a false premise and get somebody to believe it, man, you got it. You got it won. And that's what happens. If we throw out a false premise that God is omnipotent, omnipotent, that God has all the power, if I can throw out that false premise and get you to buy it, then I say to you, well, then why is there evil? And you can't tell me, because God's got all the power. So he's obviously got the power to stop it. And so he doesn't. So God must be okay with so I'm sitting here going, how did I get in this mess? And why are you winning this argument when there's a war going on? And you're winning the argument because you accepted the false premise. So somebody comes to me and says, don't you believe God is omnipotent? No. And then they don't know what to do because they're like, what? And I say, well, can you do anything? Like, bend over and touch your toes. Can you do anything? Do you have any power? Yeah, I've got a little power. Okay, then God doesn't have all the power because you've got some. It's as simple as it is. It really, but we've got to be able to understand what the arguments are and how to penetrate them. And then we're in a position to help people out. So what did I say? I said Genesis 1, right? So let's hop down to, here's God in chapter 1, verse 26. And God said, let us make mankind in our image after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heaven and over the livestock and over all the earth and over every moving thing that moves along the ground. Verse 27, and God created the man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them. God said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, over every living thing that moves on the earth. And so here's God. God had dominion. He didn't have to give it away. He had dominion. He could have kept it. Instead, he decided to give the dominion away. What's that? What is that? That's God divesting himself of his power. And then he's trusting, okay, I really am trusting that Adam and Eve and their progeny are going to handle the world right because I've just given them dominion. And he's not an Indian giver. Well, did Adam and Eve handle the world right? No. Not even for a little tiny bit, hardly. And what did they do? They ended up buying into the devil's lie, and through kind of sleight of mind, the devil ended up stealing or taking that dominion from Adam and Eve. And we see that in Luke chapter 4. So let's go to Luke 4. And Luke 4, Matthew 4 too, but Luke has this a little more clearly than Matthew. So the devil and God are in this discussion. I mean, the devil and Jesus are in this discussion in Matthew 4 and Luke 4. And the devil's tempting him with different stuff, like starts out in Luke with bread. Jesus says, man doesn't live by bread alone. Led him up, showed him all the kingdoms of the inhabited world in a moment of time. Verse 5, verse 6. And the devil said to him, to you I will give all this authority and their glory, for it has been handed over to me, and I can give it to anyone I want to. Now, why didn't Jesus just say, oh, you're blowing smoke? That's ridiculous. You don't have the dominion over the world. You can't give me what you don't own. But he didn't do that. Why? Because the devil does have authority over the world. And we see that. One of the questions I ask people that tell me that God's in control now, I say, what do you think the next life is going to be like? Oh, it's going to be great. Even if they believe that we're going to be in heaven, it's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be just a really, really happy place. I say, well, who's going to be in control up there? Well, God. Well, he's in control down here and it's not a happy place. Why are you so confident that the next place is going to be happy? It's true. It's a simple argument, but it's true. Why is the world such a mess? Because God is not in control. Does God tell us that? Yes. Clear verses like here in Luke 4:6, but let's go to 1 John chapter 5. In 1 John chapter 5 and verse 19, we know that we are of God and the whole world lies in the power of the wicked one. So it does. The world's been given to the devil. The devil's in control. And there's not just one verse that says this. Whenever God wants you to know a real important spiritual truth, then he says it in a couple different places. Here, he says that the whole world is under the control or the sway of the evil one. Look at 2 Corinthians 4:4. These are very familiar verses to you. We'll just take a quick look real quick. 2 Corinthians 4:4, in whom the God of this age has blinded the minds of those who do not believe. Of course, the God of this age is the devil, and he blinded the minds of those who don't believe. And that's why I'm back to the prophecy. I need you to know how important you are to me, because the people that have been blinded, God isn't coming down in epiphanies and standing there, hi, I'm God, you need to believe in me. Instead, what he's done is he's given us the word of reconciliation and the ministry of reconciliation, and we're going to back it by prayer. We're going to lay that foundation by prayer, and then we're going to go out and we're going to pray for doors of utterance, and we're going to pray for God to move, and because the God of this age has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They're not going to come to believing on their own. It says very clearly in Romans, how shall they believe unless someone teaches? So, and that's you and me. God doesn't do it. It's you and me. It's up to us. Let's go to a couple more of these just real quick. John chapter 12, verse 31. Because here we heard the devil called the God of this age in verse 31 of John 12. He's called the ruler of the world. Verse 31, now is the judgment of this world. Now Jesus Christ, again, from the Old Testament prophecies, his coming would come, his death would come, and then he would come back and conquer. So that's why he's talking about this is happening so soon. So he says, now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be cast out. Okay, that's a really interesting prophecy if the ruler of the world is God. If the ruler of the world is God, then Jesus just said he's going to be cast out. Well, I don't know who's going to take over, but it isn't going to be me. I'm sure not smart enough to do it. So do you have any volunteers for running the universe? So the ruler of the world that's going to be cast out is who? It's got to be the devil. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 2. Hebrews chapter 2, and we'll do verse 14. And
I have my house when I bought the door. This was going to work.
Whoops. Rob, I guess we need to. Yep, there we go. Thanks, brother. Rob's on it. Rob's the host. He has the microphone control. So in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 14, now, it's really important that this be translated properly to understand the import of what Hebrews 2:14 is saying. It's a very important verse to translate right, and it's astounding to me how many versions translate this wrong. And the Greek is not that hard here. This is the kind of Greek you can translate pretty well with an interlinear and a Young's concordance. So Hebrews 2:14. Now, since the children, that's us, participate fully in blood and flesh, and that's the way they would say it in Greek. We say flesh and blood in American English. They say blood and flesh. Participate fully in blood and flesh. In a similar way, he also himself, talking about Jesus Christ, shared the same, so that through death he could make ineffective. It doesn't say destroy. It's not the Greek word for destroy. It's the Greek word for to make ineffective. He makes the devil ineffective. He makes ineffective the one who holds the power of death, that is the devil. And it's not held the power like it was in the past tense or something. It's who holds the power of death, and the devil holds the power of death, but he's made ineffective through the work of Jesus Christ. And then we get to be God's hands and feet and help make the devil ineffective in this world. And look what happens. See, if we make the devil ineffective, verse 15, we free all those who were held in slavery all their lives by their fear of death. And it's amazing how many people are scared of dying. And it's like, newsflash, you're going to die. Ecclesiastes 8:8, there is no, that war, there's no discharge, there's no release. You're going to die. We've got to get over our fear of death so the devil can't hang it over our heads. And we can be freed. Christ made ineffective the devil who holds the power of death, and then he frees us because people are enslaved by their fear of death. It's unbelievable the things people do that they shouldn't do because they're scared of dying, and the things that they won't do that they should do because they're scared of dying. And we need to be able to step into those arenas, and that's God. And when we once we begin to engage the devil, one of the things then that we begin to realize and engage and begin to become more aware of is the evil people behind the scenes. Because just like we're committed to God, there are people who know exactly who the devil is and what he's doing, and they do it anyway. And let's look at Jeremiah 8. We've been in Ecclesiastes 8:8. We're going to go to Jeremiah 8:8. And this is so similar. This Jeremiah, 590, 580, 570, 560 BC, and he's dealing with the same stuff that we are today. There's the religious people who think they're wise and they're not, and and unfortunately the people who follow them and that become deceived. And so Jeremiah is saying, how can you say we are wise and the law of Yahweh is with us? But behold, the lying pen of the scribes has made it into a lie. Because the teachers and the copyists and the translators have turned the word of God into a lie. And there's so many mistranslations in the Bible that we have to correct. John 1:1, and the word was God. Romans 8:28, that all things work together if you love for good, if you love God. That's terrible. They don't. And it's a mistranslation. And we've got to get that straight, because then there are people like, oh, I love God. So this terrible thing that just happened, it's really good. And now I've got to figure out how. And now we go through all kinds of mind manipulation to try to make bad into good. And what did the prophet say? Woe unto you who call good evil and evil good. And there's real problems in that. No kidding. Let's go to Exodus 15. In Exodus 15, when we're talking about the war, now one of the things that amazes me when we talk about good versus evil, I think we've been reading some really clear verses, but there's just such an incredible raft of clear verses about the war between good and evil, starting in Genesis and all the way through. And so here in Exodus 15:3, I really like this. It's very, very clear. Exodus 15:3, Yahweh is a man of war. Yahweh is his name. We're done. Because the next question is, if Yahweh's in control of everything, then there is no war, because everything that happens is his will. The Calvinist belief, everything that happens on earth is God's will. He is in control. Really? My Bible says Yahweh's a man of war. You don't war against yourself. Christ made that very clear. A kingdom that's at war with itself will soon end. A kingdom divided against itself will not stand. Well, if this is Exodus 15:3, and God's been at war with himself since Exodus, his kingdom should have been done by now. So what's it mean when it says Yahweh's a man of war? Well, let's look at the context. It starts out Exodus 15, Israel's song, and this is the song. What happened in Exodus 14? Pharaoh and his army was drowned in the Red Sea. Why? Because God parted the sea. Israel went through. The Egyptian army, I give up. They were so blind, so overconfident, I give up. And anyway, they go charging into the middle of the ocean, and God just says, I'm not holding the ocean apart for you, for Pete's sake. I'm doing it for my people. And the whole ocean collapses on them. They all drowned. So he says, Moses, of course, and the Israelites were real excited about that. So verse 1, they sang this song. And verse, I will sing to Yahweh, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea. Yah is my strength and song. He has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise him, my father's God, and I will exalt him. Yahweh is a man of war. Who had Yahweh just fought and won against? The entire blasted Egyptian army. So what's it saying? There's good and there's evil, and the Egyptian people were going to do evil. And so God went to war with them and stopped them. So he's not, it really makes him a horrible, undescribably evil being if he somehow or other made the Egyptians enter the sea and then killed them for fun, or killed them for fun. That's the kind of thing that really horrible, nasty people that you don't want to be around do, that they use people that way. And Yahweh certainly doesn't. But we've got to be aware of the fact that people knowingly side with the devil. Genesis 4, please. Genesis 4 is going to be the record of Cain and Abel. And of course, Cain wanted to do things his way and they didn't work out. No kidding. We don't make the rules. So Cain was angry. The expression on his face fell. Verse 5, Yahweh said to Cain, and I love this because, see, this is Cain and Abel are like number 3 and number 4 person on the earth. There was Adam and Eve, and then there was Cain, and then there was Abel. So back in these early times, God is still very much interacting personally, one-on-one with people. And so, Cain is offering up an offering to Yahweh, and Yahweh says, I'm sorry, man, you don't make the rules around here. I don't like your offering. So Cain's all mad. So verse 6, I love the honesty here. See, we're supposed to learn from God. Somebody's doing something wrong. Somebody has a problem. We get involved. Verse 6, Yahweh said to Cain, why are you angry? Why has the expression of your face fallen? What's God doing? He's gently confronting Cain. He's not slamming him to the ground. He's, what's going on in you? Why are you mad? Why is your face so upset? Verse 7, if you do well, will it not be lifted up? If you do well, I'll lift up your face. If you do not do well, then God says this, Cain, be careful. Because if you don't do well, sin crouches at the door. Its desire is for you, but you are to rule over it. And sin here is both sin and the personification of the sin, which comes in the form of the devil and his demons. And they crouch. Remember in Peter, the devil walks around as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. But part of that devouring is pulling people in to his way and his sin. And he says, sin crouches at the door. Its desire is for you. Yeah, the devil would love for you to join his team, And then Cain kills his brother And God shows up and confronts Cain. And you know, how did Cain understand what had happened? That he had sided with the devil against God? Absolutely he did. Verse 13, Cain said to Yahweh, my sin is too great to be forgiven. I've got good commentary on that translation if you want to check it. Cain knew exactly what had happened. He knew he'd committed the unforgivable sin, and he knew now he was totally in league with the devil, which of course he was, and we see that from the New Testament. The Pharisees were in precisely the same boat. Let's go to John chapter 8. Because in John chapter 8, Jesus confronts the Pharisees that showed up or were there at the Feast of Tabernacles. Tabernacles? Yes, Tabernacles. Verse 37. Now he's talking to the Pharisees and the Sadducees who were trying to kill him. Look at his honesty here. He says, I know that you are Abraham's seed. So he's talking to the Pharisees and the Sadducees. He says, look, I know you're Abraham's seed. He's not denying that. But he says, yet you seek to kill me because my word has no place in you. Look at the honesty there. Face to face with these guys, you are trying to kill me. Now, they're in league with the devil. Are they going to admit to any wrongdoing? No, they're not. Okay, if we're watching this conversation carefully, then we know how the devil's people work in the news media or when you talk to them personally. This is a one-on-one tutorial for you and me to learn from Jesus Christ how the devil's people operate, what they are like. He says, you seek to kill me. He's very honest with them. He's very upfront with them. He says, I speak the things that I've seen from my Father. You also do the things that you heard from your father. If we think that the devil isn't talking to his children, we're crazy. We're naive. Just like God is talking to us and guiding us, the devil is talking to his people and guiding them. If you read Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, it has nothing to do with Think and Grow Rich. In the second to the last chapter, Napoleon Hill, after getting you to focus on money, 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 and material things for the entire blasted book to where you're like salivating, I've got to get material things, says, okay, in the next to the last chapter, then you need a spirit guide. And he introduces you to demons, and you can have a demon come into your life and tell you when to buy and sell. And if you don't believe me, read the book. And that's exactly what demons do. The devil and demons are constantly talking to their people. That's why they're running organizations. That's why they have so much money, because the devil's the god of the world, and he's telling his people how to get rich, and they're doing a good job of it. And so he says, you know, you speak and do the things that you heard from your father. They answered and said to him, our father is Abraham. It's a lie. They knew what he was saying. He wasn't telling them you're hearing from Abraham, and they knew that. But again, what does this tell us? There's just such a dishonesty here when you're dealing with this people. He says, our father's Abraham. Jesus said to them, if you were Abraham's children, you do the works of Abraham, but now you're seeking to kill me. He's honest with them again. A man who has told you the truth that I heard from God. Abraham did not do this. You are doing the works of your father. Why? Well, because the father was a murderer. He's going to get into that. They said, look, okay, now watch. You are doing the works of your father. They completely ignore the question. It's too honest, and they don't want to go there. They completely ignore the question. They simply attack him, not for what he says or what he believes, not for what he does, because of course he's raising dead and healing lepers, but because of the way he was born. Talk about ad hominem. You know, we're going to attack the person based on, you know, well, you're not pretty enough, you're too fat, you're not well educated enough, you're not this, you're not whatever. You know, we weren't born of sexual immorality. Okay, that somehow gives them a superior status. You know, we have one Father, God. Jesus said to them, if God were your father, you would love me, for I came from God and am here. For I have not come on my own, but he sent me. Verse 43, very important. Why do you not understand what I'm saying? Because you are not able to hear my word. This is a tutorial. People who walk with the devil can't hear truth. Where'd that get off to? It's Romans talks about the spirit of stupor. Well, let's see. Oh, there it is. Romans 11:8. Let's go to Romans real quick. Romans 11:8. Then we'll use the clock that Rob Woods has invented to come back here. In Romans 11:8, we can pick up the context in verse 7. What then? That which Israel is earnestly seeking, they've not obtained. But those who were chosen obtained it, and the rest became hardened. According as it is written, God gave them a spirit of stupor. Okay, when somebody picks up a spirit of stupor, what is it? What effect does it have? Eyes that do not see and ears that do not hear to this very day. And there are those people out there. And again, I'm back to prayer. If you're talking to someone who isn't born again of the seed of the serpent, but they've picked up a spirit of stupor because of the religiosity and the desires of their heart that are against God, then you just like Christ was not able to win an argument about these people, you've got to pray your way through this. This is where prayer is going to really make a difference. Let's go back to John 8. If you want to get back there really quick, you punch that little clock guy at the top of whatever you're watching the REV on. I'm doing mine on a tablet. And then you just poof, and you're back to John 8. It's really cool. So he says in verse 43, you're not able to hear my word. Then 44, very, very honest, very confrontational. You are of your father, the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father, and very honest. And that's where the devil's people live. They want to do what the devil wants. He was a murderer from the beginning, does not stand in the truth because there's no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks of his own character, for he's a liar and the father of them. And that's exactly, the devil was a murderer from the beginning, and so the devil's people are murderers. Of course, that's why they wanted to kill Christ. And then he goes on from there. And the priests are like that. Look at Matthew chapter 28. In Matthew chapter 28, we have Jesus Christ got up from the dead. And the way it happened, the guards, of course, were completely taken off guard. They were very surprised, and they saw what happened with the stone rolling away and that kind of stuff. Verse 11. So while the women were going to tell the believers, look, some of the guard came into the city and told the chief priests all the things that had happened. So now the priests know the truth. This is what happened to Jesus Christ. Does that affect them? Do they say, whoa, wow, that guy really was the Messiah. Holy smokes. Well, if we want to be right with God, we better go find him and apologize and ask him, what we should believe. I mean, that would be honest. That's what you and I would do when we're caught off, when we find something, when we're wrong. Wow, I was really wrong. I'm going to get, that's how I felt about Ecclesiastes 8:8. I had translated that wrong and taught that wrong for my entire Christian existence. All of a sudden, here we are last week, Bill Schlegel, it's like, oops, okay, let's get it right. You apologize, you get it right, you move on, and you start teaching it right. But they told the chief priests all that had happened. Verse 12, when they had assembled with the elders and consulted together, look at the size of the conspiracy here. This is not just one or two priests. They got the priests together, they got the elders together. This is a religious system that is dominated by a very large evil group. And if we think this doesn't happen at the core of denominations today, we're naive. It's like, there's plenty in evolution and stuff. There's plenty of evidence that evolution isn't true. But there's a core of people at the center who are driving things, who have gotten themselves into positions of authority, who have a spirit of stupor, or they're working for the devil. And truth doesn't matter to them. I catch myself, because I just, well, gosh, if we could just tell them the truth. Sorry, it ain't going to work. These guys got the truth right from the guards, and they gathered up the priests and the elders, and they didn't say, how can we can apologize? No, they gave a large amount of money to the soldiers saying, say that his disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were sleeping. And if the governor hears about this, which, yeah, he's likely to, sure, we will persuade him and keep you out of trouble. So the guards, they're between a rock and a hard place. They took the money and did as they were instructed. And this report was spread around among the Jews and continues to this very day. But that's how evil this whole system is. I think of, and we'll close with this, you look at another great example of how the devil operates, like Job. The devil said, if you take away his stuff, he'll curse you. And then all of his stuff got taken away, and Job didn't curse God. And the devil didn't come back and say, wow, I was really wrong about that. I'm really sorry. Wow, that's pretty amazing. Well, Job must be an upright guy. We better restore all his stuff. The devil is never happy, and we're not going to convince him. So again, the summary of this teaching is we're at war, and the summary of the teaching is, I need you to know how important you are. Know that I need you. You and I are needed by God. He wasn't kidding in this prophecy. He wasn't blowing smoke. He wasn't making us feel good. It's God Almighty saying, I need you to step up to the plate. He needs us to witness. He needs us to pray. He needs us to stand for the faith and pitch, and swing hard for the truth. Because if we stand back and just say, well, God's in control, things are going to work out. Yeah, things will work out, but we'll be left out. Because God will, it's exactly like Mordecai said to Esther, if you will go in and pitch, there's probably deliverance. But if you won't, deliverance will arise from another place. God will not be thwarted. He will figure out how to get things done on earth. And we make the choice. We can either be players or we can sit on the sideline. Guys, let's be players. End of my teaching.